Welcome back to another Reaper blog video. Today we're checking out IK Multimedia's Mixbox, the free version. This is a rack-based effect that you can use in Reaper or any other DAW. It has a variety of built-in effects and many more to upgrade to, and it has some really nice features built in. Let's take a look. So this is Mixbox from IK Multimedia. This is not a sponsored video, by the way, just something that I saw that was free, that's M1 compatible, recently updated, and I wanted to check it out while I'm waiting for them to update the entire T-Rack series, which I really depend on. This caught my eye because it's a plugin I haven't used before from a company that I've used a ton of their stuff before, and they had a free version, so it's worth checking out and sharing if I found it useful. This is what you get inside. You get Flexi Amp, which is 4 amp models and 4 cabinet models. You can turn the amp or the cabinet off as well. There's a channel strip with compression, overdrive. Was this a 4-band EQ, 5-band? There's a digital delay with 4 different modes from mono, doubler, left, center, right, and left, right. This would be similar to what you'd find in the Amplitude 5 digital delay. This is like a classic IK Multimedia digital delay that's been in their Amplitude products for a long time, either tempo synced or not, with a feedback, a filter, and a wet-dry mix. Distortion with 5 different modes. This is a guitar distortion primarily, and you're going to really hear that this adds a lot of gain. The lowest position on the gain knob is +6, so it's not something you can make very subtle, and it goes up to 50 dB of gain, which is more than enough. There's a limiter just to manage your levels a little bit, tame wild peaks either at the beginning or the end of the chain. Filter phaser, which seems to be sort of like a Mutron type of filter. A very basic chorus, which I'm not sure what is based on. It's not like a Juno style, probably more like a Boss style chorus. And there's a digital reverb with a medium or a large mode. Pretty basic, but can be useful. And you can put these in any order, so you can just drag and drop to move them into a different position. Top left, there's a button that goes from a 4-piece rack up to an 8-piece rack. I don't see a scroll bar. There is a scroll bar here. If you're short on screen real estate, that is a helpful button to have. And by default, it will open with 4 effect racks showing. At the top here, we've got the effect selection, and we can see the entire list of available effects. Digital delays, reverb delays, tape echo, distortion, crusher, lo-fi, overdrive, overscream. So these are very similar to what you'd find in Amplitude. For dynamics, there's the Black 76, British Dynamics, bus compressor. So again, these are things from the T-Rack series. Stripped down kind of rack, 500 series rack style interface. 4 EQs, a filter. In the filter section, there's various like Moog and Formant filters and things like that, which you would find in the Sample Tank series. Tons of modulation from tremolo, rotary, univibe, flangers, stuff you would find on synths and from guitar pedals. For reverbs, there's pretty much every type of reverb, from ambience, digital reverb, hall reverb, as well as the Sunset Sound stuff from the T-Rax line. And for saturation, there's a phonograph, Saturator X, and tape cassette. So lots of stuff, and a lot of these are locked in what I would consider to be a fairly expensive bundle. What you get with the basic free version, I think, is pretty fun. On the left side, we've got input metering and a input volume fader. There's a button here that toggles between different modes for the bottom section. So right now, with both of these buttons off, we've got presets for the entire plugin. If I click on this button at the very bottom, that's a preset list for each plugin, which is pretty cool. Then clicking the button there above, there's no labels on these buttons, so I'm not really sure what this one is called, but this is basically a wet-dry mix for each effect module within the rack. Super cool. And if we click on this button that changed to, say, rack, that's an overall wet-dry mix for the entire plugin. In Reaper, we've got the wet-dry control at the top right, but nice to have if you are using this in another DAW. So wet dry control for every single plugin, plus a lot of them have a mix control already, like the reverb and the delay and the chorus, but you can blend in the dry with the wet for the Flexi Amp or with the channel strip. Sort of like parallel compression, parallel distortion, things like that. And that's one way you can kind of tame the sound of the distortion by cranking up a nice distorted tone and then pulling back the wet to blend it in with your original undistorted tone. You can save presets here for the entire rack or for individual effect modules. On the right side, we've got an output meter, a volume control for the output, a global bypass, and then a view of the reverse of the panel, and we've got solo buttons for each of the effects, plus an overall gain control +6 down to -100. Pretty cool to have all this stuff in a free plugin. There's also a standalone Mixbox app. And so if you wanted to use this for live mixing, maybe this would be useful. If we go to in the standalone version, there is a sidechain input available. The plugin version seems to have one, but no button to actually activate where that would be used. For the compression, I tried using the sidechain input on the plugin within Reaper, and that didn't seem to trigger the compression. So I'm not sure how that works exactly. Maybe some of the other plugin modules respond to sidechain. The IK Multimedia plugins in general have never had a sidechain input, so maybe that's something that's coming to T-Rax. Maybe, maybe not. In the standalone version, if we click on the top left button, there's a view of the rack as a rack of racks. It's 8 separate effects chains with 8 effect modules within each one, which is kind of cool. We can turn off the power of each one. We can add in more plugins from here. We have input and output trim controls, the sidechain input enable, and then I believe this is a monitor input function. We can also set this to go to separate inputs and outputs. So you can use this as an external mixing rack, have a bunch of different like reverbs and delays and stuff set up in the rack running standalone. Then you send tracks from your DAW into here and then back. In Reaper, you could do that through the reinsert plugin, along with some virtual cables, something like that. This is something worth exploring. But yeah, for now, let's come back to Reaper. In this project, I've got some synths and some drums, and let's hear what we've got. A couple instances of speed drum machine, like a retro kit, and then a kit made with some samples from the Prism library. Already kind of processed. Then we've got some synths from the Minilog, which is that guy. Yeah, so the first layer of synths sounds like this. Already pretty distorted. Second layer is in this section of the song. And there is some reverb and delay kind of already printed onto that, but that's what I've got for this project. And then the third track, kind of a pulsing pad. So let's use some instances of Mixbox on those retro drums and play around with this. The channel strip. So that really adds a lot of smack to the snare, which I like. It is kind of bringing out the hi-hats in a way that I don't like. So I could either go into speed drum, turn down the hi-hats, or adjust the EQ. Let's take the high shelf. So here's before and after. Let's do 12K. All right. So let's try this out with the limiter next. This overload knob is kind of like your headroom or your ceiling. It's a little odd to have a minus 5.33. Why that number? I don't know, but now let's try this filter. Let's move the limiter down to the end. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't even realize this before. It's a phaser, but it's a filter, and it's not a modulating phaser. That's something you don't see very often, like a phaser filter, yeah, instead of a modulating phaser. I like that right there. All right, let's put some reverb on here. There's the large 1.5 second time, density at 50%. Let's bring that down to the lowest. Almost has like a gap between the initial hit and the echo. Now let's try the size control. And the color. And on its own, that reverb doesn't sound very good, but I think it adds something to this. Right around there. So here's the original drum sound. Cool. Let's move on to the next set of drums. And this time, let's try out some of the presets here. So there's a drums, parallel comped drums. And in this one, the limiter is being used with the wet-dry control. Here's phaser breaks. Quick drum bus. Soiled groove. That's pretty cool. Let's try out some of the bass presets on the drums. Fuzz the bass. You know, it might be cool to take just the kick drum, run it through an effect chain like this, and then blend that in with the dry kick drum. Let's take the wet-dry control. So here's the original sound. Pretty cool. Let's go back to the presets. Subcontroller. Sometimes these really distorted kicks can be pretty cool. I think in this case, I'm going to turn down the amp a little bit. Now, one thing you have to watch out for when applying these to stereo sources is a lot of times these are going to run in mono. So the Flexi Amp is going to be in mono. The channel strip and limiter will be stereo, but some of these other effects, like the distortion, it sums to mono first. The delay has stereo output. The reverb has stereo output. The chorus works in stereo. But some of the others are made for guitar pedals, and then they're going to be processed in mono. Just something to keep in mind. It's not a huge limitation. It would be nice to have the option of running in stereo all the time, but it is what it is, and it is a free plugin. Original sound. Kind of beefed up with the Mixbox. I like it. Let's try out the distortion. So this distortion is kind of like the Boss DS1, I think. Kind of filters out a lot of the lows. This one retains a lot of the lows, which is nice. Remember, this is the lowest amount of distortion you can apply. So Distortion 1 and Clip 1 are my favorites here. Distortion 2 can be cool for guitars if you also want that low cut in there. And this is another one that runs in mono. Okay, so let's go with Distortion 1. But you know what? Let's bring that down to about 50%. 48. Let's try that chorus. So we can snap the rate to our tempo. So in this case, we want it to be like the slowest possible. I want to try the reverb on this to see what it's like getting kind of a percussive element to this. I don't know if I'm really going to get that, but I think right there sounds pretty cool. All right, before, after. It's a bit more motion, a bit more space. It's got some brightness, got some more dirt to it. Quickly moving on, let's jump to another Mixbox on the next synth. Channel strip. Compress this a bit. Cut out all the lows. You can hear that there's already a reverb on that. That's from the synth itself. I will also apply a bit more reverb just because I want to hear that. Again, let's go with a super short, maybe medium density and kind of dark. There's original. And let's hear that filter. I think this filter phaser really adds a unique character to things. I like this effect a lot. It might be worth getting just for that one effect. And the last one, before we balance everything, let's get some channel strip. Do some air and high shelf. And we'll just take the low shelf down. $10K. And then let's get, I don't know, chorus. Let's sync it to the tempo. And get the delay going in here. Let's do the left, right, and a 1/8 delay. Let's try that solo function. So that's what that one effect sounds like. All right, so we got some stuff happening here. I'm just gonna add relimit to the master track. Yeah, where'd that go? To the master track. And we'll just mix into this. I think probably too much reverb here. That's better. I think that'll do. Actually forgot to show you using Mixbox as a guitar plugin. I've actually saved a couple presets in here from the first time that I played with this plugin. So I'm going to start off with the Distortion 2 algorithm as kind of a low cut and clipping sort of thing, kind of like how you would use a tube screamer, maybe a little bit more low cut. A dotted eighth note delay on mono, then another delay set to eighth notes on the doubler mode. Then we got the lead amp with the gain pretty low. That's going into a reverb at 28% wet, very dark. Channel strip just barely touching the compressor, a little bit of a low boost and air, and I think that might be like kind of the default settings for the EQ, and then into a limiter. And then post-rock guitar, I'm just going to add in the limiter here, setting the drive to 0 and the overload to about 3. I'll just update that preset. In this one, I've got the distortion off, but if I did turn it on, it would be on distortion mode 1. Flexi Amp, then again, 2 delays. I just like doing that for post-rock style stuff. Really kind of evolves over time. Eighth note on the doubler mode with wet dry at 34%. Not so filtered as last time. A second delay on left right mode, so stereo, with a quarter note dotted Again, wet, dry, not at 50%, 36%. Going into a reverb at 21%, large mode, 4 seconds, very dense, and 1.5 dB on the compressor setting. And I think the EQ is flat. The amp settings are basically the same. That's 6.4 for most of these. So that's Mixbox from IK Multimedia. Again, there's a free plugin. There'll be a link in the description. Not a sponsored video, but I just thought it was interesting and wanted to share. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.